potential as a premier business and leisure destination. So the sector is already caters for diverse travelers, including corporates and executives. The business is growing. We have high-end hotels, restaurants, resorts, among the others. And with the recent hike in brand A tariff and rise and fall prices, hospitality and tourism businesses are overspending to meet their high-end demands because they can't afford downtime. So today we will seek sustainable pathways for hospitality business and facilities to overcome their energy challenges, and we will leverage on the experience and in-depth knowledge of our distinguished panels and address reliable challenges, share insightful thoughts, and practical advice on achieving energy reliability and optimizing costs. So I'll be introducing our panelists. Let's meet Dr. Adola Okupe. It's such a pleasure to meet you. Dr. Adola Okupe is a tourism expert and principal advisor at Red Clay Advisory, a hospitality and tourism consultancy based in Nigeria. Working on hotel development feasibility studies, hotel strategies, tourism master plans, destination development and management projects in Africa. Adun holds a PhD in strategic tourism leadership from the University of Surrey. Her master's is in globalization and development studies and is from the School of Oriental and African Studies. She has a first class in business economics degree from the University of Cairo. Adun has worked with the University of Edinburgh, Lagos Business School, W Hospitality Group, the University of Surrey, the World Travel and Tourism Council. Just to mention a few, she's a member of the National Economic Summit Group, where she is the research chair for the creative industry, entertainment and hospitality subgroup. Adun enjoys traveling, bird watching, hiking, gardening, cycling, and most recently cycled from Bardox to Toulouse along the Canal de Grine. I hope I pronounced that well. So let's welcome Dr. Adun to this. It's such a pleasure to have you, Ma. So next we will be introducing Peter. Okay, Peter is the Vice President, Commercial and Industry at Arnergy. Peter heads the commercial and industry sales at Arnergy, the leading clean tech in Nigeria that leverages innovation and intelligent solar technologies to spread clean energy access. Over 8 years experience in business development, finance, corporate strategy, investment advisory. Peter has built a remarkable track record in organization growth, business development, and capital raising. At Arnergy, Peter leads the commercial and industry team, focusing on understanding the unique energy demands of Nigeria businesses across various sectors. He is dedicated to providing comprehensive and tailored clean energy solutions to clients. So let's welcome Peter. Peter, it's such a pleasure to have you. Also, we have Lola Johnson. Lola Johnson is the Executive General Manager of Genesis Hotels and Restaurants. Lola Johnson is a distinguished professional in the hospitality industry with over 2 decades of extensive experience. Her career spans multiple sectors, including the FMCG, utilities, high fashion, allowing her to bring a wealth of knowledge and innovative practice to the hospitality arena. Lola's academic background is as impressive as her professional journey. She holds a degree in accounting and business from London Guildhall University, UK. Further solidifying her experience, she is a member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. In recognizing her outstanding contribution to quick service restaurant sector, Lola was honored with the QSR Manager of the Year 2003 award by QSR Awards Africa in January 2024. Lola Johnson is a career testament to her expertise, dedication, and passion for the hospitality industry. It is such a pleasure to be meeting with you all, and I'm so privileged to be your host. My name is Princess Adeze Okunie, and I'm your host for today. Thank you. So we're going to dive right into it. Your questions and insights are valuable to us. Please, people on the call, note down your pressing questions as the conversation develops. Towards the end of the conversation, we will open a chat box for Q&A and take and respond to your questions. So as we go ahead, please note down your questions, and we'll take them as before we round up the session. Thank you. All right, so I will start with Dr. Adola. It's such a pleasure to meet you, ma'am. The question for you is, the recent Brand A tariff hikes have widespread effect across sectors. How significantly have they impacted the profitability and sustainability of high-end facilities and hospitality in Nigeria? So what are the impacts of the high tariff rates in hospitality and the sustainability of the hospitality industry in Nigeria? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Princess, and good morning, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be here. I would say that in terms of what's been happening, as we know, it's really about having access to consistent electricity, because for hospitality ventures, you have to provide service, or you have to provide service to all your guests or your customers, and they need to know that when they come into a hospitality venture, that electricity is not something they have to worry about. Why I'm saying this is that the alternative is, if you don't have constant electricity.
Once again, everyone, as I mentioned before, we're just having more positive.
I don't know. Peter, can you hear me? I think you're the only one moving.
Okay, I can hear you very well, Dr.
Oh, okay, because everyone else was frozen. Okay, so what I was saying was that when guests come into a hospitality establishment, they want to have access to electricity, right? They want their services to be provided to them. And for owners or managers, the alternative is looking for other sources of power, so diesel. And so the Band 8 tariff, I think if we look at it in isolation, it looks like the costs have increased. But then the costs have increased in line with a guaranteed number of hours of electricity provision, which is 20 hours, right? And so to the extent that PHCN does provide, the discos do provide the promised level of electricity, it really does help for planning. It helps with planning. It helps you to understand that, okay, if I have 20 hours a day, I only need to factor in 4 hours a day of looking for alternative power supply, looking at either solar energy or looking at inverter usage or looking at generators. And so what it's really about now, I would say that owners and managers are really thinking about is how do we plan better? Because once you can plan better, you can deliver better quality service. And even if power is more expensive, the fact that it is consistent, it is reliable, will help you to be able to say 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 1 year from now, how much are you spending? And we never had that before. Before, you just basically have diesel and you just count, you just have to buy diesel whenever there isn't any power. And I would say, therefore, that it's a good thing if the discos can commit to what they have promised us to provide.
Princess, looks like you're muted again.
Princess, you're on mute. So if you unmute, I don't know if you can hear us. Oh. Princess, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
So Princess is having an issue on meeting from her end, so she will join with her phone, then we can continue with it.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. I was I'm so
having
sorry. I was
issues.
I'm so sorry. I was I'm so sorry. I was I'm so sorry. I was I'm so sorry.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, am I audible? Hi, is it sorted now?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Wow. Apologies for my network, and my laptop has been messing up all day, but I hear you, Dr. Adwola. And we understand that we do have about 20 hours on Band A, but the hospitality and sector and tourism sector values guest satisfaction above all else. How do the business and the sector manage to meet its obligation? I've missed the recurring grid collapse. So there is a recurring grid collapse, and sometimes there's fuel and diesel scarcity. So even though you're able to plan within the 20 hours, you can't trust that there won't be like a collapse. So how do they do that? How can the hospitality and tourism business accurately determine their current and future energy demands to aid long-term planning? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, but I'm not sure who is the question for.
It's for Dr. It's okay. It's for Lola. It's for Lola.
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna respond, but because you mentioned the doctor, so I kind of kept quiet.
I'm
Maybe
sorry.
things had changed a little bit.
Lola.
Okay. So thank you for having me today. Yeah, I look a bit. I'm actually trying to open an outlet, so I'm on site right now. But yeah, nice to be here. Okay, so yes, we talked about planning, and really that is it. It's planning and planning. We have, so in most of our hotels we have diesel dumps of about 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, depending on the site, liters. So we plan way ahead. We have the trucks come to deliver the diesel to the hotels or the outlets, because I also run the restaurants as well. So it really depends. So, but then there's also an angle where you um engage the clients as well. So they also know, and they're very aware of the situation in Nigeria. So I think part of that is also customer engagement, but and also ensuring that your service is of the highest standard. I think sometimes they will forgive you for the things that you probably cannot always control within your space, as long as you give them the highest customer satisfaction in other areas. So you're engaging them right from the booking, to when they're in, to post, to when they leave. So they know, and they go say, okay, fine, you've given us a fantastic experience at your hotel, despite the fact that yes, there was a power grid failure or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think if you plan ahead, most times we can overcome the challenges that the economy chooses to throw at us. Obviously, we have alternative energy, but that can be quite prohibitive sometimes, the cost. But we also have, like, your inverters. So even when there's no lights, even the switch between generator and the electricity from the grid, we try and make it seamless as well, so the customers don't actually feel it. But then that's how we manage the guests' expectations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next question is for Peter. So Peter, businesses must access energy demand correctly to find viable energy solutions. How can hospitality and tourism businesses accurately determine their current and future energy demands? How are they able to correctly find these viable solutions? Even though Lola has mentioned that you can tell your customers that, yeah, we won't have light at this time, you're able to manage their expectations, but there are customers that just do not want to see the light go off. How can their energy demand correctly find viable energy solutions?
Thank you, Princess, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on this session. It's a pleasure to speak with Dr. Odupe and Ms. Johnson. To respond to your question, I would say that as it is pertinent in several sectors, but more so in the hospitality and tourism sector, power is very, very critical to their overall service delivery to their customers, right? And as Dr. Odupe alluded to earlier, customers don't want to worry about energy needs when they are within, a hospitality business or a tourist business. They just feel like it comes with the overall offering that power would be constant. So with that in mind, given that it's so critical an ingredient to the success of the business, it is very important to have adequate planning in place to ensure that this does not cause a service failure. Now, one thing that is very critical for business to achieve stability is to have a good understanding of its overall energy needs, right? And to do that, one way to sort of like constantly be aware or abreast of your energy needs is to have, smart metering, right? But even going a step further is to also conduct an energy audit, which could be a periodic which could be done periodically by a business to have an independent assessment of the overall load profile of the facility or the business, right? What this does for you is that you can basically tell what your consumption of energy is like during daytime and during weekends, what your peak load is, what your average load is, right? I think that's a good first step. Another thing that's very important is to have an installed energy management system. Again, like I said, smart metering. Typically, even with our systems, before we conduct, or before we go install our system, we like to start with, conducting an energy audit to understand how customers use energy, what their load profile is. And then also when we install our system, we also ensure that this energy management system is put in place. And I say this critically because what the energy management system does for you is that having understood what your energy audit has told you or what the energy consumption is prior to installation of the system, you're now able to monitor the real-time data, and have like real-time data, available to you to understand how load profile is changing, how, you're consuming, and depending on your energy mix, you're able to see what sources of energy you're getting and what the use of that energy looks like and what excess energy is not being utilized. That way you can sort of like rebalance your energy needs and also ensure that you are operating in the most efficient way. Another angle that I would add to that is what I'll call benchmarking, right? So if you think about any business, right, for you to sort of like operate, successfully in the long term, I think one important step is to understand how other players in the industry are faring, right? And to do that, what you need to do is basically have, similar operations or similar businesses to the size of the business that is, trying to assess its energy needs and have a good sense of what their energy consumption is, what their load profile is. Another way to benchmark is to also look at the kind of equipments that other businesses are using to understand your own, equipment versus theirs and seeing which equipments are most efficient. Because also another way to properly manage your energy is to ensure that you're using the most energy efficient equipments for your business or for your size of operation. To give a very specific example on benchmarking, you could see 3 different hotels or even 3 different event centers. And when you think about how they operate their cooling system, one could use a central air conditioning, another could use maybe 5 standing ACs, and a third could also use maybe 10 2-horsepower air conditions. Now, it's very certain that all of those 3 will have different outcomes in terms of energy consumption, right? And also the cooling effects, basically what it would achieve in terms of cooling. So it's good to understand what is the optimal service I want to provide, and also what is the implied energy consumption, and then how can I be most efficient in picking the right equipment for my needs. So I would say, to summarize, I would say conducting periodic energy audits, which is independently carried out, having smart metering to ensure that you have a strong and a reliable energy management system in place, and also benchmarking your energy needs against other competition, as well as picking the right equipment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is quite educating. I hope people are taking notes and seeing that there are easy ways to understand what your needs are, and you're able to plan those needs, and you're able to determine how your current and future needs can be managed. Thank you so much, Peter. So for Lola, most power sources incur operational and maintenance expenses to function optimally. What are your experience managing these recurring costs for various energy sources, and how do you compare in the short and long term with all these expenses? Lola.
Okay, so yeah, the costs are, I mean, when the Band-Aid tariff went up, they didn't even give us time to adjust. We had to pay and pay everything immediately.
Yeah.
So, but what we do on a daily basis, we track the cost every day,
Okay.
every single day. The energy reports go out. It tells us how much electricity we've used or units we've used. It tells us how much diesel we've used, and we expect that when electricity usage is high, that the diesel usage is high. And where we see that there's any issues, we immediately send, the maintenance people to have a look and check what's gone wrong. So it could be anything. It could be there's a piece of equipment malfunctioning that is spiking up the usage. We have maintenance schedules as well for all our equipment. So all the equipment are maintained periodically at the right time after a certain number of usage. We have automatic light keys in the rooms. We also have done a lot of awareness training for our staff and customers as well, so that they're aware that, I think even in the general populace, now that we have band-aids, so I used to live in the UK, it's normal in the UK for people to track energy, for people to ensure lights are off when not using it, heaters are off when it's not needed or at the correct temperature, because your energy costs are kind of like commensurate, or at least a significant portion of your earnings. But in Nigeria, for a long while, energy costs have been either fixed or not commensurate even with your usage, with the high cost of energy, which in a way is kind of a good thing. Everyone's really, really looking to see, how much is my energy cost. Switch off all the lights, don't run your TV, don't leave your TV on when you don't need to. So it's really, sorry, the light has gone away. So it's really about awareness and ensuring
Yeah.
that people know what. Yeah. So yeah. Also, Peter had talked about buying equipment. That's one of the things we actually do actively when we buy equipment. So if I give you an example, in the outlets, if we're going to buy a pizza machine, we look at the size of the outlet. There's no point having a huge pizza machine that will use up a lot of energy when you can have a smaller one that is fit for purpose. So those are the kind of things that we look at in terms of managing those costs. Literally as we can.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for your answers. Thank you, Lola. All right, I will head back to Peter. So, Peter, looking holistically at both capital expenditure and operational expenses for luxury facilities, how do the ownership costs for renewable energies such as solar power system compare to the grid and traditional generators over time?
Thank you for that question. I think it's a very important question that we always typically get when we're trying to make a case for renewable energy, investments, right? And it's one that we consider to be a very long-term investment to see the overall value in a business compared to maybe their current energy costs. Now, it's important that you also broke it down into CapEx investments and OpEx, right? So for those who don't understand or who are not following that, CapEx is your capital expenditure, which is basically, you buying an asset. And then OpEx is your operating expense, which is your running expenses on a day-to-day, right? So when you think about power, buying your generator or buying your solar solution would be the CapEx investment, while OpEx would be your maintenance expenses and fueling, right? Now, the interesting thing to think about in renewable energy is that you don't have fuel costs. So fuel cost is basically zero, while the maintenance cost for renewable energy is relatively flat, means there isn't a significant increase in that maintenance cost over time. Whilst, as we know for fuel, right, there's a significant increase. So the way to think about it is that in terms of the CapEx investments, the initial capex investment for a renewable energy solution can be high, right? And that's the reality, right? And the best ways to think about how to reduce that initial capex investment is to think about maybe incentives such as grants that can be used to reduce the overall cost of that capex investment initially. Another way to think about incentives is also thinking about financing options. So when you think about, the financing options available for that initial high capex cost for solar, you can think about, there are loans today that allow you get subsidized interest of say 16% per annum when you are making a capex investment in solar. Whereas prime lending rates today in Nigeria is about 32% per annum. So it means if you wanted to even take out a loan to buy a generator or buy a solar system, while there are loans at 16% per annum for solar, you would have to go and get market rates to buy a generator, right? No one is giving subsidized loans for capex investment into diesel gen sets or even gas gen sets. So that's one way to think about that capex spend. Now, when you come to the OPEX spend, that's where it gets interesting when you think about the overall cost of ownership of either a diesel generator or a solar generator or a solar system, right? So an overall cost of energy, again, to carry everyone along, is the overall cost from the capex to the operating expenses of over the lifespan of that asset, right? So this is where we see that the renewable energy solutions have a lower total cost of ownership compared to diesel generators due to the savings that come from, fuel and reduced maintenance. Now, just to give us more context around how maintenance costs can be quite steep for fueling. If we think about 10 years ago in Nigeria, PMS, right, in Nigeria was 97 naira. Today, we know PMS is 700. That gives you an idea that it's grown at maybe 80% year on year to achieve 6 times the price 10 years after, right? Now, even if you look at inflation in Nigeria, inflation today is 30%. If you look at long-term inflation in Nigeria, it's about 15%. So when you think about that labor spend, because the comparable increase in maintenance cost for solar is labor-driven, right? If you think about labor spend over a 10-year period, that labor spend, which is required to clean your panels on a periodic basis, is not as steep as a 80% year-on-year increase in fueling costs. So when we tell people that, when we try to justify the overall cost of ownership of renewable energy, we think about the capex as an upfront spend that can, over time, reduce your overall cost of energy. But then to round up, I'll just make one last point, which I think is very critical for businesses, right? And I would say that when considering energy spend,
I think everyone can mute until they are allowed to speak.
Thank you.
Please.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So when considering energy spend for businesses, I believe businesses prefer predictability to over volatility, right? And when any business is planning, if they see an option that gives them strong predictability, I think it's also a strong value proposition, right? Because what that does for them is that it helps them, in budget planning, long-term planning, financial modeling. It just increases the overall efficacy of the business because you can plan and predict your energy spend over time. Now, that's something that you can only guarantee today with a renewable energy solution because you know your capex costs. You have an idea what the maintenance cost will be for the next 15 years. And there's no global factor that is affecting the price of that maintenance spend. So I think that this, again, buttresses the point where you start to think about it that for a business, it is more optimal for me to use something that helps me be more predictable, be more efficient, and also ensure that I'm able to achieve long-term savings, also benefit from incentives such as, grants, tax waivers from the government, to support the sector, as well as, subsidized borrowing costs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. This was quite enlightening. Thank you so much for your in-depth explanation. Our next question is going to Dr. Adola. ROI, return on investment, is an instrument for significant business investment. What are the practice ROI consideration and metrics hospitality and tourism business owners can use to evaluate and compare their investments in various energy resources? So what is the ROI and metrics hospitality and tourism businesses owners can use to evaluate and compare their investment in various energy sources? Thank you. I hope you got that.
Yes, thanks, Princess. So in terms of return on investment, right, and it's nice to hear the feedback from Lola, right, who is actually on ground managing day to day. A lot of the work that we do is particularly when people are thinking, oh, I need to build a hotel. Where should I put it? How do I build it? Or for a state, oh, we have these tourism sites. What should we put there? So our work comes in very, very, very early on, and you almost have to project for about 3-4 years, because that's a development period for a tourism asset, and then say, how is it going to work well? And I mention this because it's important that, and I think Peter alluded to some of this, which is it's important that when you're starting out to look at a hospitality establishment, you understand that it's the design of how you design it will affect the cost of running it. And I say this because many times owners call an architect or just call someone to design something, right? And it becomes much more expensive to maintain. For example, cooling, air conditioning, right? Peter mentioned that. The way you design central spaces that don't require air conditioning all the time will mean that you don't have to allocate costs to that all the time. For example, how we design shopping malls in Nigeria, particularly, where you see the structure is boxed in and then you have to cool the central parts, means that it's expensive for all the tenants, and that cost goes back to the customers. Whereas if we have a strip mall type style, or we even have like courtyard step style, you don't have to cool these central areas. The cost of operating becomes lower. And so to answer your question, I would say that hospitality owners need to really think long-term. They need to think about the user experience. They need to understand that the investment now might seem a bit more expensive, but you actually get it. It's actually cheaper over the cost of running the asset. And that is also about life cycle. And so for me, it's that sense of getting the right experts to start to create the structure of what this is going to look like. So one of the projects we're working on now, right, we're looking at a green island, and it's not in Nigeria, and it's that sense of you want to have something that is sustainable. So we're thinking even about the material, the texture of the material, to ensure the type of material, to ensure that you don't need to spend so much money cooling it, or so much money lighting it, or so much money running it. And so when you come back to the ROI and the practical things to think about, right, you think about, okay, if I'm investing, X amount of money, so let's just say 4 million naira, when do I expect this to give me back returns? And it's important that, it's like when you farm when you farm, you don't farm immediately and expect to reap immediately. There needs to be, it's not possible. There needs to be a time to germinate, and there's a time for it to grow. And that nurturing time, I would say owners are not as patient, right? They want to build it, they want to open it, and they want returns immediately. And then that means that you cut corners, and that affects the quality of service and the quality of the experience that your guests and your customers think about. So when you're thinking about the metrics that you need to think about for your energy source, and because the question is really about energy, you really need to think about designing it for the climate that it's going to be located in. You need to think about alternative sources of cooling. You find a place where everywhere is paved, it's concrete, right? And then there's pavements or paving stone. It's heat generated. So the entire building is going to be hot all day, all night. Think about using greenery, think about grass, all of these different elements that will come back to a natural cooling system. And then you think about energy sources and say, how do you have, I think Peter mentioned it, but you need to have several forms of energy sources that you can switch on and switch off depending on the load of what you're investing in. So for example, if I have a 20-room hotel, my energy requirement is different from a 50-room hotel or a 100-room hotel. And what I tell owners when they come to me, I'm like, if you build a 100-room hotel and you only have one guest, you still have to ensure that the entire hotel is lit, because nobody wants to go to a hotel where, you know, oh, this corner, this restaurant is not open because we only have you as our guest. This, you know, that cannot work. And so it comes back to the totality of saying, how do I ensure that I can run this establishment sustainably, effectively, and efficiently? And so I would say it's about having different forms of energy sources, understanding the different loads that you can put on each of them, ensuring that there's consistency in the type of supply, but also ensuring that the people that are running the establishment understand why energy consumption needs to be managed. And when we say energy consumption, it's not, and I say energy as an example, it's not just energy, it's also water, right? It's also different types of resources need to be managed effectively. And we're not doing that well enough. I know we're metering now, you know, to say electricity, but we need to also start metering water. We need to start thinking about how do we reuse water? How do we channel a circular hotel design or a circular restaurant design, that energy that is used or not used in certain places can be utilized in other places? And I mean, there's a lot we can say, but I think I'll stop here for now. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Dr. Adola. This is quite insightful. Thank you. So we will be heading into our next line of questions, which will be on managing CapEx and financing options for premium renewable solutions. So this is for Lola. Hospitality facilities require massive capital investments to set up, scale, or equip with dependency energy solution. How can hospitality businesses approach and fund investments for very critical and capital-intensive business initiatives? Did you get me?
I'll start by, yes, I did. I'm not a alternative energy solution expert, but I'll come at it from a hospitality and my experience in hospitality and how we fund our own investments. So obviously there are various ways to fund. Primarily will be to use your internally generated funds, which is usually the cheapest in a way, or at least because you don't have to pay interest on your own funds. So that's what we prefer to do. So every month we put away some money from all the different establishments that we have, and then when we need to build or open a new outlet, we go get that fund, or if we have any other capital type of investment. Obviously the other ways could be you raise through equity. You can get shareholders to invest in your business and then therefore raise money that way. There's obviously pros and cons to that. As soon as you have shareholders, you're answerable to them as well. So you have to report to them. They have their own unique demands that they want. And also they need a seat at the table because they have an investment in your business. So you then sort of lose the autonomy of making decisions in your business. But I guess you just need to look at the pros and cons and decide which works best. You can look for partners, joint ventures, so you can have another business also who is interested. Sometimes the government also partners with entities to, ensure there's growth within their states or even at a federal level to provide employment within the economy. So the government, that's one, either private venture, joint venture, or with the government. You have NGOs or grants or different types of programs that also invest, that want to invest in Africa, that want to invest, that you can also approach. And then finally, you got the loans as well. The loans are, from a P&L perspective, are okay because they're tax deductible, so reduces your tax burden. But at the same time, they can also be quite prohibitive because of the price of the loan. We tend to use maybe BOI. BOI has lower cost, but they also have their own requirements that you need to meet to be able to get a loan from a BOI. And a lot of the private loans are quite very expensive. So it really, you just need to look at your business, what you're trying to do, what works for you, but there are different types of funding that you can get from, and you can have it doesn't have to be one way, you don't have to use all your own funds, neither do you have to get a whole loan, neither do you have to, just use a joint venture. You can have a combination of all those different sources to build one project.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lola, for that insightful answer. And I hope we're all taking down notes and jotting down questions. Okay, so I keep calling you Dr. Lola. So
I don't mind. I'll take it.
so you're going to be a doctor soon. All right. So I'll head to Dr. Adu Nola. Most business need flexible financing and support to adopt renewable energy. How do financial institutions and investors support businesses in the tourism and hospitality sectors that are willing to invest in green and sustainable initiatives like solar energy? Are there any funding opportunities or government incentives that can be explored?
Great question, and one that I get asked quite a lot. And I think, Lola, for sure, a PhD is in the horizon, seeing as Princess keeps referring to you as Dr. Lola. I would say that there's several forms of financing, right? And I think particularly for renewable energy, but I would say also for renewable buildings, right? So expand it beyond just the energy consumption. I think I've mentioned. So there are certain funding and there's certain advisory that is being advised that's being provided that you can say, okay, this is how I build a green building, because you don't want to build a building that you have to spend so much to try and create energy for, or rather source energy for. So already from the type of building, and I know the IFC have the EDGE accreditation, and you can look at it to say, okay, how do I design a building that already fits within this? Because once you have a building that is already certified as EDGE design, then it also opens you to certain funding or financing opportunities that you might not necessarily have before. That's one. I would say as well that, we have the Bank of Industry, we have certain organizations, certain banks now that are really thinking about, how to finance green initiatives. But again, it's really not just about the energy, it's the building in totality. But what I also know is that certain funds, certain private equity firms, etc., are looking to say, how do we support organizations that are really trying to go into this sustainability venture? We have sustainability financing organizations that exist. But coming to renewable energy, and I think for this point, we're talking about solar, for example, is that organizations are also coming up to say the initial investment that you might need for a solar infrastructure within a hospitality venture is quite high. And so they can help match this initial investment, and then you can pay back over time. Of course, this is a loan, and so that's a bit more expensive. And I think Peter available as well. One thing that I want to really talk about or really draw onto is that it's important, and part of what we're trying to do is to engage with the banks to let them even understand and there's quite a lot of support that is available to them. We need to ensure that the same is done for hospitality and tourism. The challenge is because our industry is so fragmented, it's almost like, where in the value chain do you provide this support? Where in the value chain do you provide this assistance and do you provide this help? And I would say that one of the other things that we're doing, we've done quite well, is to work with government agencies, ministries, to help them to understand the realities on ground for people in the hospitality and tourism space, and that they can also then say, how do they create incentives? How do they create incentives to build well? How do they create incentives for renewable energy? How does this come back either in tax rebates or in some sort of low interest loan? And we did this a long time ago. There was something that was done a long time ago. I can't remember what year it was, but with LSETF, and they released some financing for the hospitality industry. Again, we need people in the industry to come to us to let us know how best to represent their interests. So I think we did something we did, I think it was 2021, which was the West Africa Tourism Roundtable Series, where we had a lot of practitioners coming in and we're able to push this together and engage the public sector on saying, how do you provide support for the industry? So more of this has been done. We've also worked, I think the NSG also did something a while ago, looking at how do you integrate sustainability into tourism and how does the government then support that? So a lot of things are happening right at the high level, but it's how do we distill it so that we ensure that we can take advantage of it. One key finding that we made, and this is one thing that I think hospitality owners need to understand, is that if we're not in the formal economy, right, if we're not registered, if we don't pay our taxes, if we don't pay all of these things, then it's very difficult for us to access some of the support and opportunities that are available. So that's a gap that we need to also close. And we also need to better come together to make our requests known to the government, to make our requests known to the different ministries so that they can provide the incentives and support that we need. What we do is we complain in our silos and we expect them to know what we need. That does not happen. We need to really, ensure that that loop is closed and feeding that back to help them come up with the solutions that we need. Thank you. You're muted again.
Oh, hi. So thank you so much for your insightful answer. I'll head straight to Peter. Peter, so the high cost of acquiring renewable energy solutions comes with proportional risk. What essential steps can businesses take to mitigate this financial risk? Can you suggest financial arrangements and partnership that they can explore with renewable energy providers to manage this high cost of acquisitions? Peter.
Thank you. So your question is in two parts. One is the associated risk, and the other is financing options. So I'll start with the first. I think, like you rightly said, the risk is enormous given the significant cost of, acquiring these systems, right? So I think it's very critical that before one goes into, installing a solar project, particularly for commercial and industrial scale installations, it's important to have like a thorough due diligence, both on the technical and the financial proposal being made. On the technical proposal, in-house, sometimes there is capacity based on, overall in-depth experience in how energy works. And, the in-house team of a company and organization can properly assess the technical proposal being put forward. And where that competence is not very strong in-house, I think it is even worthwhile for businesses to get like an independent consultant to provide guidance and confirm that they are getting the right solution for their use cases, right? I think that thorough due diligence goes a long way in protecting the investments that is being made, right? So I think that it's critical that one pursues, thorough due diligence. I think the next step is insurance, right? Looking at, our country, there's very low insurance penetration, and that's basically heightens risk, right? But insurance is there to sort of like reduce the risk that one takes when making an investment. So there are different stages and layers of, insurances that could be, utilized to protect such investment. I think the first is, maybe the GIT insurance, which is goods in transit. So ensuring that whoever is providing this service to you has a goods in transit insurance when they're even delivering the equipment to you, because a lot happens on the road. Like, there's a lot of safety hazards on the roads when, goods are traveling in Nigeria. So it's important to ensure that there's goods in transit insurance, which typically is covered by the solar provider, right? So if you were getting your system from Energy does have goods in transit insurance that covers, the assets from, factory to destination. Another is, installation insurance to ensure that if anything goes wrong during the installation process, that, one can recoup such from an insurance company, right? And I think finally, the onus is on the customer to say, when I now have this asset in place, fully installed in my possession, either when I am in full ownership of the asset or when it is being financed, do I have adequate insurance to protect against fire and burglary? I think maybe the risk of theft is very low, right? Because of the size of this installation typically, right? Risks of theft will be, someone comes and steals your solar solution and takes it away. So that's maybe very low, but also one we have to consider that if, for example, there is a safety hazard and there's fire in the entire facility, right? That is independent of, the solar solution itself, but can impact the solar solution adversely. So it's important to ensure that you have adequate insurance to cover you and protect you from all sorts of losses. I think to answer the second question on various financial models or financing options, I think I'd mention 3 different options that one could pursue. And one is what we call energy as a service, but it's more popularly known as power purchase agreements, right? So it's worthwhile for businesses to, look out for options like, PPAs, power as a service, where you don't necessarily need to own the assets, but you can finance this with a financing partner where they own the assets, but you basically pay for the energy that you consume from the system. Another option would be the lease to own model. I think the lease to own model is quite popular. It's a finance lease where you don't have to pay the overall cost one time, but you can sort of like spread the cost of owning this system over a 3-year period, a 5-year period. And now we are starting to see businesses even go 7 years for lease to own, right? So with energy, depending on the size of the business we're partnering with, we typically now offer between 3 to 7 years of lease to own financing to customers, depending on the customer and how we view the credit risk of that customer. Another option is what we call green bonds and loans and green loans, right? So a business that is stable, that has been around for long, could go to the capital market and raise a green bond. And, the capital market investors, your pension funds are happy to invest to support green initiatives, right? But again, this is for more mature businesses that can access the capital markets. However, even businesses that are not at that scale yet can also get green loans from banks like Access Bank, FCMB. You would see banks offer much lower subsidized interest rates for green initiatives, right? So this is one way to also finance solar solutions. I'd like to stop there. So give room to continue conversation.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for that explicit explanation on what's available for customers to assess to be able to use renewable energy options. Thank you so much. So can you please also, Peter, tell us about viable energy mix and configuration to meet high-end demands of luxury and hospitalities in Nigeria? Can you tell us what viable energy mix and configurations are available for this luxury hospitalities facility?
Thank you, Princess. I think before I even go there, I think there was one more point I did not mention on the ways to mitigate the risk of such significant investments. And I will say it's, ensuring that you have the right product warranties from whatever OEMs are providing these solutions to you. So again, with picking the right equipment for your solar installation, you can pick equipments that have longer lifespans and that are from credible original equipment manufacturers that have been around and are leading players in the industry. So if you basically make you're making this significant investment, it's worthwhile to ensure that you're also sourcing the materials or the components from the right equipment manufacturers that have the right protections and also provide you with long-term product warranties. So if you're using batteries which are lithium, which tend to have longer lifespans, for say 15 years or longer, you should be able to get 10 years product warranties for your lithium batteries. And similarly for your solar panels, if you're using a grade A panel, you should be able to get product warranties for longer than 15 years for your panels, right? And the lifespan on those should be 25 years or longer, right? And similarly for your inverters as well, in the same vein, ensuring that you're getting products that have long-term product warranties from credible partners that are going to be around for that long term is very important. Another way to mitigate that overall risk, so that if anything goes wrong, you can rely on those partners to come through and provide those warranties to you. For energy today, energy does provide up to 10-year warranties, on certain systems. We also have systems that have 5-year product warranties, just to put that point as another way to mitigate risk. To speak to the other question on the viable energy mix, I would say that, again, there are several ways of integrating renewable solutions into your current energy mix, right? So, for example, there are businesses that understand that, okay, our needs are more daytime. So again, when we think about tourism, we're not only thinking about tourism and hospitality, we're not only thinking about hotels. There are also businesses that are like recreational parks that's probably run in the daytime. There are also restaurants that don't run 24-hour services. Maybe they run from, up in the afternoons and maybe in the evenings, right? So when you understand your operating hours, you can also pick the right energy supply that would meet your needs. So for example, if you know that your daytime needs are much higher, you could go for a solution that has significant PV inputs into your power sources, and maybe make allocations for batteries, that's energy storage, to accommodate the times when you're off sun peak hours. So again, like I said, there are many ways to balance your solution to ensure that you're getting the most efficient outcome. Either you're sort of like utilizing a grid and then you're tying solar into it to make it a grid tied system to ensure that you're able to meet and address your energy needs efficiently. Or you're saying, you know what, I want to go completely off grid and have a PV solution, and then also provide adequate energy storage through batteries to achieve complete a full renewable offering that meets and addresses your overall energy need. So I would say that, it's to ensure that you get the right configuration to meet and address your own energy consumption patterns. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you. Okay, so right now we'll be taking a poll. The pool will be coming up on your screen. So please do well to participate in the pool that are coming up on your screen. I hope everyone is participating. It's very important. We will be displaying the answers for the poll at the end of the session. Thirty seconds more. All right, so we will head right into it. So right now we will be discussing on the topic of exploring available renewable solution configuration and practical uses case. And Peter has talked about how we can do the mix of storage and panels, or just panels and inverters, depending on what your needs are. I will like to ask Lola this question. As an experienced, successful leader in the industry, you have dealt with the reality of business in Nigeria and sustainability demands. How have you managed these two considerations when making business decisions? And what advice would you give to younger businesses in the industry? Thank you. Lola.
So my question, I'm probably not going to answer your question directly at the back, because in my own opinion, I think Nigeria is not yet ready, whether it's commercially, politically, socially, for alternative sources of energy. I feel that there needs to be a social awareness, because it doesn't just impact on energy costs. So like Dr. Adu said, it's really about everything, how we use all our resources. So whether it be water, whether it's the gas, whether it's the electricity itself, we're very wasteful in this country. So there needs to be a shift in the mindset, for us to truly embrace alternative sources of energy or sustainability as a whole, because it impacts the environment and all. So if I take a hospitality project, I don't know, we're building a hotel or a restaurant, for you to have a sustainable solution, it needs to be built into the design. Not to say that, Peter has said, you can have solutions even after, but it's usually more expensive. If it's already in the design as it's being built, at the design stage where all the experts come together, it's a lot easier, it's cheaper, and it's more sustainable. So from our schools, from our homes, the government, everybody needs to get together some way or the other to ensure that Nigerians have an awakeness to sustainability. In terms of the business, I think we approach it from not necessarily a sustainable angle, more from a cost, what is cheaper for us. So ensuring that, like I said before, monitoring the cost. For example, we have light key, so when nobody's in the room, the light off. That's how we manage it. So because right now, that is.
Is it just me? Can you hear Lola?
Sorry, I think I went off for a second.
Yes, you did.
Yes. So I was saying, we look at it from a cost point of view, but really, businesses as a whole, we should all be looking at it from a sustainability point of view. The future of the earth, the future of our the economy, the future of our children, the future generation, and start to think of sustainability at the point in which we start thinking about the business opportunity that we're trying to chase. I think for the younger people or for the younger businesses, that would be my advice. When you think of sustainability, think from the beginning. Don't let it be something that you're doing as a token at the end, or something that is only cost driven. It needs to be something that we do because it's the right thing to do. So that's thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lola. I think one of the things we must take away from this sessions is the aspect of planning, the aspect of a change in the way we manage energy and like Dr. Adola said, not just energy when it comes to electricity, water, all our energy, and design. When you're designing your facility, what do you put in to make it more efficient? So thank you so much. We need a total character change. I hope we all take that out from this section. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll head right to Dr. Adola. Tapping into your real life experience at the Red Clay advisories, how important are sustainability initiatives to the operational efficiency and growth of thriving hospitality and tourism businesses in Nigeria? Do you think renewable energy solutions fit into this sustainability needs?
Yes, I do. That's the quick answer, short answer. I would just go back to what Lola said, which is that Nigeria, we're really at the tip of the iceberg in terms of the journey that in terms of where we are on our sustainability journey. You know, when I go to a hotel now and I see them telling me how if I don't use this towel, if I don't need this towel, it's beautiful, I'm saving the environment. And I laugh to myself because I'm thinking this is very performative. There's so much that can be done, so much more. And it's not simply about, oh, if you put your towel here, then that's it. The amount of waste that the hospitality and tourism industry generates in terms of food waste, in terms of the toiletries that are put into the rooms, right? In terms of the energy, electricity, water, etc. It's huge. And when you think about this waste as a percentage of cost, and roughly about 20-25% is wasted. And that's a very small conservative estimate. Just think that you can save 20-25% of your running and operational costs by having a sustainability lens, right? And I think that really helps owners and managers to see these things a bit differently. So for some of our clients, hotels, boutique hotels, etc., restaurant lounges, they've started to think about how do they create circular economy solutions, which is even from your food. And this was particularly, after COVID and everyone understood the risk of the exposure to the supply chain and you're waiting for something to come from abroad. How do you start to think about cuisine in local cuisine and reinventing that so that you can really source things locally, but then you then source things that as you need them. So you don't necessarily need to buy so much, have to consume energy to freeze them, offering food to your guests that is frozen, not fresh, right? And so that experience just really tapering into saying, you need to really think about also how we understand each of the different departments. So laundry is one, housekeeping is one, food and beverage is the other, right? Front of house, etc. And I like to come back to design. Why I come back to design is because I think that a lot of mistakes can be solved on the table, on paper. I was designing.
Oh. Can I mention quickly that the questions and answer is now open? So please, guests, you can start asking your questions. So we take it right after Dr. Adola concludes. Apologies for cutting you short. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. And so we're designing a hotel, a resort project, right? And we're working with the architects and just helping them to understand that, this flow that looks nice on paper is not going to work from an operational efficiency point of view, and helping the owner to understand that that's not going to work. And all of the, glass, why you put glass, right? And glass, this is another example, you put glass in front of the central areas, not windows or louvers, right? Automatically, you're creating spaces that you need to cool. Just really thinking about all of these elements will help us to think about how to think more sustainably. But my final point beyond all of this is that we cannot have sustainability initiatives. We cannot have any of these things working well if we don't empower the people that are working in the industry to even understand what it is that we're trying to get them to do. And so it comes back to the quality of labor, the quality of talent, and the investments that its owners, the managers are making in the type of people that are working within the industry, and just changing that mindset to helping them to be a lot more aware about their responsibility for waste, for conservation, and also for reuse. Right? And so anyway, long story short is that for renewable energy solutions, they fit for sure, particularly the ones that help different departments to track their consumption so that you can hold people accountable. It's not enough to say, okay, this is all the diesel we've used today as a restaurant. Where is that diesel consumption going? What department is consuming more?
Yeah.
Are we freezing more than we need to freeze? Are we operating, like Peter said, are we operating at the right time? If you have more solar infrastructure, perhaps you do more of the day, more of the laundry, etc., in the daytime, so you don't have to burn enough energy in the evenings to do the same thing. And then just really driving, that architecture. And when I say architecture, not now the building, but the architecture of the operations, right, really helps to drive more efficiency. And I think that we have a long way to go, but we really can get to it if we are concerted and we're determined. And what I tell owners, quick one, I know I said the last one, quick one, what I tell owners, right, I worked with an architect on the project, and he said to me that, Adrian, the way we build, not even just hotels or restaurants or lounges, is that at the end of construction, 30% of the materials used on site has to be taken away as waste. I mean, just think about that. So your 30% of your building cost is already waste just because you're not building intelligently, you're not building sustainably, you're not building effectively. And then you think about the design, think about all these other things that I've said. And so I would say that driving more efficiency, driving more operational efficiency is very important. And renewable energy solutions can help us to understand how better to track so that we can make better strategic decisions that can help us deliver more value, better experiences to our customers.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adola. I hope we are taking a lot home. There are so many options available for us, and there are also ways to manage these options. One of the things we can also take away is that we can't complain individually. We might need to come in groups and form groups where we are able to make our voice louder, make our needs louder, and have the government listen. And even when we get these grants, we get these facilities, how do we manage it and channel it right? Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Lola. Thank you, Dr. Adola. Thank you, Peter, for your time. We'll be taking questions and answers, questions from the audience, and hopefully we will round up very soon. So questions from the audience. All right. Okay, so all right. There's a question from Tito Chineke. Who are you borrowing loans from for solar services? Why borrowing loans? I think Peter will take this. What are the implications? Doesn't it affect our mentality in some areas? Is there no other ways other than loan? Peter, maybe you would want to answer that.
Thank you. Happy to take the question. So I think first I just want to say it's just been a pleasure spending this last few hours with such amazing panelists and intellectual ladies. I've learned a lot. I have a lot to take away from this session. So it's been an absolute pleasure. And basically to answer this question, I believe Lola spoke to this earlier, right? That, from their own business and using their own business as a model to answer this question, that loans don't seem to be the first option that they would consider. And I think that some of these reasons, are again pertinent to our markets, in Nigeria, where people associate, banks chasing for repayments with, mental stress. So I can understand how that can impact on business owners, particularly smaller scale businesses. And for those reasons, again, the first place to look at is maybe the cash flows of the business to see if the business is by itself sustainable to carry on that costs. And where the business has strong cash flows, you might actually be able to work out, a model or a payment plan with whoever is providing the solution to you, depending on the capacity of the solar solution provider to have their own balance sheet to maybe avail some these tranched payment opportunities to you, right? So that's one way to look at it. If you know that your business can generate the cash to pay, and you just need some flexibility in payments, I think you can explore that with your the provider of your solution, right? Perhaps they could also have a planned acquisition for you. So for example, if they say, okay, maybe pay 30% upon getting the equipment ready, pay another 30% upon installation, then maybe pay the balance 40%, 60 days after installation. So that's something you can do maybe from your business cash flows. And also, like Lola said, you could also explore raising additional equity from existing shareholders or new shareholders. And with all of the reasons she has also stated, that's another way to make such investment, because the way to think about this is that this is an opportunity to scale your business or to run your business more sustainably. So it's worthwhile to actually raise additional capital to say, okay, to further strengthen the sustainability and the efficacy of this business, we want to go into an equity round. So again, just borrowing from Lola's points there. Now, to say that the loan option is also another way of financing this, indeed it is. And I think I also made the point earlier that you're likely to also get better financing terms for loans for this particular purpose, right? So where you're able to explore cheaper financing, again, for a business that's already borrowing at 32% or higher, if they see a loan at 16%, it's a grab, it's a steal, right? So from that perspective, if a business is already comfortable having repaying loans and the business by itself is sustainable, there are tax incentives that you can get for your business or tax benefits to taking loans, right? Again, I'm just borrowing everything to recap what Lola has already shared with us, right? So these tax incentives also makes your business more efficient, or rather tax savings that you get from having loan in your capital structure basically helps you basically have a more efficient capital structure for your business. So again, I think this challenge of the mental strain of loans literally comes with the markets where we operate in, and I think is also the relationships that businesses have formed over time with their banks. But I'm certain that for businesses that are already at the stage of maturity where getting debt in their books is just sacrosanct to how their business runs, then it's not going to be a challenge. More so, it's a benefit because the loans for renewable energy solutions are relatively cheaper across the board, particularly if you're talking to the right partners. Lola mentioned BOI. So one of our great partners in that area is BOI. I could also mention Access Bank, Sterling Bank, FCMB Bank, Stanbic IBTC Bank. These are banks we as Energy also work with, and we can also facilitate introductions for partners who want to explore banking relationships that gives them cheaper loans. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Tito still asked, what are the incentive programs in Nigeria as a whole? Do you know, Dr. Adola, of any incentive program in Nigeria as a whole?
Yes, I think I shared that in my response. So the question came before my response. The question Peter was writing, so I've already shared that. But just quickly to just talk about what I mentioned, which is that it's important that depending on the state that you're operating in. So if you're in Lagos, for example, connecting with LSETF, connecting with the ministry, and there are different ventures that are made for entrepreneurs, for businesses, depending on the life stage that you're in. So there are also, like I mentioned, there are also different incentives that are available depending on what type of building that you're about to construct. Sometimes it's easier to get it from the start from the design phase before you actually have a building. But when it comes to renewable energy, I think Peter has just mentioned some of the organizations and banks that are giving access to support for people to get on the renewable energy solutions. But I would say that the biggest thing is that the incentives. Sorry, let's start again. I know the Bank of Industry also does different incentives, again, depending on the location, depending on the type of assets, but there are different sustainability focused organizations, focused financing organizations that support owners and investors in looking at what they're trying to do for renewable energy solutions. Most of the work that we do, because most times when we work with clients, is really before they start to build the hotel or the restaurant or the attraction. And so they plan the sustainability dimension of it, and it goes to investors. And so investors usually are from around the world. And because of that, it opens up the product or the asset to more investors and more support than they do normally get if they didn't include a sustainability or circular economy consideration. So like I mentioned, different incentives, so aid programs from multiple countries, institutions, organizations, so like USAID, World Bank, IFC, etc. Depending on the type of project, they can provide this, but it's usually difficult to retrofit it for something that already exists if you're only trying to look at, oh, I'm going to get solar energy. So I wanted to just make that distinction.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll have the pool presented right now, so we'll see the pool presentation, the pool results. I'll still go back to your questions. I will ask your questions. Okay. So what are your business most pressing energy challenges? We have a higher percentage with 55% saying high band A electricity tariff. Okay, 58% is actually the highest. Rising generator running cost. Rising generator running cost. Then the second one is insufficient grid electricity supply. Then pollution of noise from generators. Then the next question is, what's your most critical consideration when acquiring a new power solution? So the highest is the quality and reliability of the solution, then followed by affordable pricing and financing option, customer reviews and reputation, available warranty, just like, okay, so this takes in line of what Peter mentioned when you're trying to acquire a reliable energy solutions, things you must consider, which is the availability of warranty, and quality and reliability of the solution. Then the third question is, what's the major hindrance to businesses in your industry to seek advocacy, if I'm right? So raising capital for high acquisition cost, which is the highest hindrance to be able to raise capital. The second highest hindrance is integration with existing power supply setup, and I think that can be solved with working with the right partners. When you work with the right partners, they are able to do this separation and integration for you. Then another one is limited and unfavorable financing option, which Peter has also addressed, and low cost of awareness and education. All right, number 4 is, how important is it to achieve energy efficiency? We saw extremely important to be the highest vote, moderately important 10%, and slightly important 3%. And the last question was, how high has your electricity cost increased over the past 2 years? So the highest percentage went for 100 to 200%, and then there is a 300 to 500% and 0 to 50%. Thank you so much all for participating in this poll. Thank you. So I'll still head back to answer, let's see if we can answer 2 more questions before we round up. I'll take a question from Prince MK Minor. How could you balance the rate of the grid to solar? Because as business leads, I have some customers who are willing to do energy solutions, especially energy as a service platform. And they've raised concerns on balancing cost of the grid to solar. So I think what Prince is saying, how can we ensure that the grid is, the solar is as competitive as the grid? The cost of the grid scene is already high. Can we make solar that competitive too? So Peter, I'd like you to take that.
Thank you. So if I understand that question correctly, what's the MK would like, Prince MK would like to know is how does, the cost of solar compare to the pricing of the grid? So I believe the pricing of the grid today is somewhere above 200, and if we're looking at band A, is somewhere above 200 naira per kilowatt hour, And what we have found with solar is that we've been able to achieve what we call grid parity with solar installations in Nigeria. Now, the terminology grid parity basically means the pricing of a solar installation being able to match the pricing of grid or lower, right? So depending on your on the lifespan of the solution that you're installing today, we can tell you that the solar solutions that we are offering are able to achieve grid parity, which is cheaper than the current band A pricing. And that's something that you're holding that cost constant over 10 to 15 years. So that's the benefit to the end user. Now, one thing we do with our proposals is that we show you the naira to kilowatt hour pricing of the solar solution that we're recommending to you. So for every proposal you get from Energy today, you would actually see the naira per kilowatt hour pricing, and you can easily compare that to your current pricing from the grid if you're on band A or band B, and then you can think about the benefits. It's important to also note that for the other bands apart from band A, these pricings are going to trend to cost-effective tariffs in the future. So within the next 3 months to the next 18 months, we know that most of these other bands would also match either the band A pricing or even be higher. So it's worthwhile thinking about grid pricing from the band A perspective, and also comparing it to solar, where we are certain that we've been able to achieve grid parity. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. Yeah, it
And
does.
if you don't mind, if you don't mind me taking the next question as well, from OM.
I'm thinking of the kindly throw more light. That I'm hoping that would be like our last question. Kindly
Yes.
throw more light on the OPEX aspect of renewable energy. I got to the part about periodical cleaning of solar panel, but apart from this, are there any other operating costs that should be looked out for?
Yes. So thank you. That was a question I really wanted to answer because it's important.
Okay.
Because I appreciate that was a keen listener when I was speaking about the maintenance cost of solar. Now it's interesting, that is the only cost that is associated to maintaining your solar installation. Again, sometimes we would come with a blower. A blower is just something that you use to blow out the maybe dusty, if there's some dust that has sat over the batteries or the inverters, and we just come with a blower and sort of like try and take away all of those dusts over time. But that's not as critical because you could have those assets there for 10 years without doing that. Now, during the Harmattan seasons where we have more dusts, during the raining season, by the way, the panels clean themselves, just the rain basically coming on the panels and cleaning it. So during this season in Nigeria, we don't need to come and maintain your panels. Your panels will basically take care of themselves because of their positioning on your roofs. However, during the Harmattan seasons, we tend to do Q4 and Q1. We would typically come and clean the panels, and that's the only maintenance cost. Like I said, it's a labor-tied cost, and we're able to basically keep that cost relatively flat for you over 10 to 15 years. So that's something that you can think about. We've had customers who pay us one time for 10 years of cleaning their panels, and then we're able to just go service that customer over the next 10 years because they've already paid for it from ab initio when they installed the system. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, thank you so much, Peter. I would like to just read the contribution of Omo Ilobe. to everyone. Just to add to Dr. Adun earlier submission, planning on the 4 hours power availability for Band A customers is not feasible for hospitality business, whom require 24/7 power, largely because Discos do not own power generators, Genco, or willing infrastructure deliver power. I think planning for an extended period is more appropriate to cope in seasons, possible feeder trips, switching or system downtimes. Thank you so much, Omong Ilobe. Thank you so much. I don't know if Dr. Adun will want to say anything on that before we close the webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Omon, for your comment. I think I caveated what I said by saying this is what they have promised, right? This is what they have said. If they deliver what they say, then it helps us to plan better. But I would say that and I know estates that have successfully negotiated this. If you're Band A tariff, then they're committing to give you 20 hours. Now, those 20 hours doesn't mean that you don't need backup electricity. It just means that the cost of running the establishment should hopefully be much reduced because, and when I say much reduced, I mean because you're not having to use diesel generator all the time. But it depends on how consistent it is, how reliable it is, and of course, the quality of the electricity that is being provided.
Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you so much, attendees. I hope we're leaving here informed and equipped to make the right changes to our hospitality and whatever industry. I think most of the things we've learned here does not just apply to the hospitality industry. It doesn't just apply to the tourism industry. It applies to every regular business. It applies to our homes, the way we manage energy, the way we build our homes, estates, developers. I hope we go home with some very insightful information on how to run our electricity needs. Thank you so much, Dr. Adola. Thank you so much, Lola. And thank you so much, Peter. It's been such a privilege to host this, and we hope to talk more on this. Thank you, guys. We close the webinar now. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you,
everyone. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Yeah. So we have their handles, so you can reach out to them on LinkedIn and ask them more questions. Yeah. Peter, you're having more questions, so just reach out to him on LinkedIn and he will answer the rest of your questions. Thank you.